Krishna Krishna Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. Please let us note the name of the deities are Radha Kunya Bihari. Kunya or Kunj is in the forest of Vrindavan. There are these, let us say, desire trees which come together with certain creepers. Creepers, which means the plants which grow around the trees, and somehow or other, due to the conscious nature of Vrindavan's forest, the forest builds little houses or enclosures which are called kunjas. Some of these kunjas have a veranda where Radha and Krishna sit and overlook the beauty of Vrindavan's forest, and an interior room where the divine couple retires for loving pastimes. Some kunjas are like palaces, really, which are formed from the forest in order to give pleasure to the Lord. So I think somehow or other, this arrangement uh, in this park-like forest of Vrindavan with this wonderful altar, which I believe Braj Kishori has conceived and done. It's really nice. It's actually, if you look very closely, it's Giriraj Govardhan. There is a river of nectar flowing, coming down, and then there is a forest enclosure with flowers and so on, just like it is in Vrindavan. I want to also say we want to request now our Kaustubha Prabhu to address us on the meaning of Radhastami. So while he is taking place, while he is taking his seat, I'm sorry, I just want to say that just being here at this sacred day and trying to tune our consciousness purposefully towards Vrindavan Dham and towards Radharani will ensure all of you that you will get a little of this river of mercy which is coming from Srimati Radharani. It is. Don't you also feel the atmosphere feels a little lighter and a little less Kali Yuga? No, I feel like this. No, Sadashiva also joins me in feeling like this. Good, good. So let us welcome our Kaustubha Prabhu. Maybe you do not know Kaustubha Prabhu. Kaustubha Prabhu is a very old devotee. He is known in our movement as the Brahmana and the philosopher. He has a lot of services which he has done, and currently he is serving with Raghunath Prabhu, our next speaker, on this very amazing spiritual podcast, The Wisdom of the Sages. So we really are in dire need of some wisdom, Kaustubha Prabhu. So please address the devotees. Let us affectionately welcome Kaustubha Prabhu with a massive round of affectionate applause. Go, Premananda! Hari Hari Bol! Oh, this is a violent Kaustubha.
This is almost too beautiful for me to wear. Okay. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunaditam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suteli Pranamami Hari Priya Panchakalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubheda Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. It's an honor to be asked to speak here. It's a joy to come back to Germany. I haven't been here since 1993 or 94. And there's some people that I know here from back then, and a lot of new people that I'm meeting now. So it's been a real special pleasure. And I want to thank Sacinandana Maharaj for his super kind invitation to come, and for his honor to be, granting the honor to speak here. And I wanted to thank all the organizers, especially Banu Nandini and Gadadhar Prabhu, for taking doing all the seva to make sure this is a beautiful but at the same time safe festival. And thank all of you for coming. I wanted to, to speak about Srimati Radharani is something that I feel, and I'm not just saying this like because it's the thing you're supposed to say, but it's I really feel it, that I really feel very disqualified to speak on this topic, but I'll try to share a little bit. One thing to think about, to consider, to meditate on. I find it very fascinating, and somehow comforting, warming, and just special. That if we look at Srila Vyasadev's contribution, literary contribution, what he wrote, I mean, it's inconceivable what he shared with us. The 4 Vedas, the Upanishads, the Vedanta Sutra, the Mahabharata, and then all the Puranas, culminating in the Srimad Bhagavatam. How can one person do this? Only if they are granted that Shakti by Sri Krishna himself. And that is the case that is the case with Srila Vyasadeva. But this is what I find so interesting, is that it's such a contribution. The 4 Vedas themselves, I mean, the hymns to the god of the sun and of fire, and to King Indra, Lord Indra, the king of heaven. All the rituals that need to be done and the mantras that need to be chanted, that all that information of worlds that are unavailable to us, that we can only understand when it's handed down to us. What a rich collection of information. It's actually beyond someone like me to study and deeply understand. It goes so deep. But then it goes further, it goes into the Upanishads, where there's the conversations and the questions and the answers of the sages, and they're speaking in this somewhat cryptic, poetic language that's describing how something that's beyond what's given in the 4 Vedas, that we are spirit, aham brahmasmi, ways to think, ways to understand that are beyond what the 4 Vedas gave, and that speak to this very high aspiration to transcend our material condition and become free. And what other author has been able to give any other author that's written on this kind of thing is really doing it based upon the foundation that's been laid down by Srila Vyasadeva in the Upanishads. What author can compare? Vedanta Sutra summarizes it all. Mahabharata brings it all to the masses in such a fascinating, captivating way, with 100,000 Sanskrit verses, the stories that are told, the wisdom that's shared. It goes deeper and deeper, and of course within that is the Bhagavad Gita, where Sri Krishna himself summarizes all the information in the Upanishads and gives more, and points to bhakti as the ultimate goal of all of this. And then there's all the Puranas, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of verses, Sanskrit verses, beautiful verses. And then it all builds up to the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the Srimad Bhagavatam itself builds and builds and builds and builds into its climax. And when we get to the climax of it all, when we get to the highest teachings of all of this Vedic wisdom, of all of these yogic teachings, the very pinnacle, what it all is meant to lead to, where it all finally goes, who's speaking? Is it a king? You know, some king who's like, you know, the king of even, you know, the Puranas are speaking about kings of planets and planetary systems, people, men with incredible power. Or is it a sage that's been for hundreds of thousands of years meditating on some planet in Tapaloka beyond the heavens? It's none of these things. It's a group of teenage girls, and they've just made a big mistake. They've run out of their home in the middle of the night because they've been captivated by some boy who's playing a flute. And they've been warned as they're going out the door, don't go. Right? If you go, don't even bother to come back. It's so wrong what you're doing. But they can't hear that message because their heart and their minds are completely captivated, and they run out into the forest. And quite frankly, although they're extremely beautiful girls, they're a kind of a mess in this moment, because when they heard that flute, they became controlled by it. They had no control left. And so they ran. Some of them were putting on their mascara, and they had it only on one eye and not the other. They ran. You know, some of them were putting on jewelry. They put it on wrong. They ran. They were dressed wrong. Some of them were like cooking, and they just ran out the door, and it just kept burning in the oven. When they got out there and they found Krishna beneath that tree on the bank of the Yamuna with his flute, they were kind of in disarray. And then of all the things that could have happened, out of all the risks that they took, they just gave up everything just because he played his flute and called them. And then there they were. And then he looked at them and had the audacity to say, what are you doing here at this time of night? This isn't correct behavior at all. You should all turn around right now and go back to your homes and go back to your husbands and go back to your children. What are you doing here? Go back. How could he say such a thing? And what did they do? They started to cry. And so now they're crying, and all the mascara is like kind of washing down their face. And they're speaking. When they start to speak, it's like all choked up, like they can't even properly speak, you know, clearly, because they're so emotional. Right? It seems like the last person you're going to hear the highest yogic teachings from, the last situation that you're going to find it in. But this is how Srila Vyasadeva frames the highest teachings on yoga, right there in that conversation before that Rasa Leela dance. But I want to hold on that for a moment. Let's get back to that and hear what they had to say. We'll save that for a moment. But what I want to mention is that this topic, the topic of Srimati Radharani, it's considered to be very confidential. It's considered to be this very highest rung of all conversations, of all discussions that we could have. That's why when I say I feel disqualified to speak on it, I'm not just saying that. I know that I really am. You know, Ramananda Roy is asked by Sri Chaitanya a simple question. Speak to me some verses on what is the ultimate goal of life. Now, Ramananda Roy is saying to him, I am not qualified to speak to you at all. What qualification do I have? No, I want to hear you. I want to hear you speak. And he begins to climb this ladder. Now, this conversation is in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's in the Adi Leela. Such an important conversation, but even this conversation is considered to be very confidential. It's something that ordinary people could never understand. It's something that when we approach it, we have to approach it with great reverence. We have to hear it from people that have heard it from people that are very qualified and that are approaching it with that reverence, if we have any hope of truly understanding this highest, most confidential message. So Ramananda Roy begins to speak. And he speaks first about Varnashram Dharma, a very good message, something that someone who's a follower of the four Vedas might have said, this is a very good answer. But Sri Chaitanya says, you can go higher. You can go higher. You can go higher. You can go higher. He gets up to speaking about the love. After climbing through so much of the Vedic knowledge, he gets to this point where he begins to speak about the love that the residents in Vrindavan have for Krishna. It's a different type of bhakti, right? It's like this intimate, it's a whole different relationship with God, than it's a new platform. And now it's like, you're getting warmer, but please continue to go. Go higher, go higher. And he speaks still higher, and then he begins to speak about the love of the Gopis. Still, please go higher. Then he begins to speak about the love that Srimati Radharani has for Krishna. And this subject is where Sri Chaitanya finally says, okay, now you've come to the right point. Now this is what I needed to hear. Now you've brought it to the highest goal of human life, to understand the love that Srimati Radharani, to understand something of the love that Srimati Radharani has for Krishna, is the highest goal in life. And for us, it's the most nourishing thing that we can meditate on. There's not so much direct information about Srimati Radharani in all those texts, because it is such a confidential subject. It's so sacred. But if we want to try to understand it, there's a wealth of information in the Adi Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And there's two chapters in particular. The chapter that I'm speaking of, the conversation with Ramananda Roy. There's another chapter, it's the 5th chapter in the Adi Lila, which the chapter is meant to help us understand why Krishna comes as Sri Chaitanya. And if we're going to understand why Sri Krishna comes as Sri Chaitanya, we have to understand Radharani, because he came to understand her emotions. He came to experience her emotions. So we have to understand something about the nature of her emotions. And so much is said there, more than I can speak about, more than I can understand. But I just want to mention a couple things that are mentioned there. One thing that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says about Srimati Radharani is that her devotion, her love for Krishna, it nourishes the devotees. It nourishes. In other words, the way that I understand this is that we're all meant to naturally, spontaneously feel deep, moving emotions of affection and love for Krishna. That's our healthy, natural state. But we're like malnourished. We've been eating the wrong food, and our minds have become corrupt by so many illusions and false ideas. And that pure love, we think we're looking for love in so many different directions, and generally we're very confused about what true love is. But when we hear about Srimati Radharani's love for Krishna, that nourishes us, it's pure, it's healthy, it transforms us from a state of illness to a state of wellness. That the devotion, the love of Srimati Radharani nourishes the devotees. So it's something that we're meant to contemplate. It's something that's meant to transform us to a healthy state by meditating on her love. There's another thing, and there's another statement that he makes there. He says, he speaks about how Srimati Radharani is the personification of the Ladini Shakti, the pleasure-giving potency. And he says that Srimati Radharani is the full power of Krishna, and Krishna is the possessor of that full power. That everything that's meaningful to Krishna is invested in her, because Krishna's only interest is in the exchange of rasa, the exchange of love. And she possesses that love in full. She's the full power. And he's the possessor of that full power. And when I think about this, I think when we speak about Srimati Radharani, I think that her love and her devotion can be a little bit scary. It's very deep and it's very mysterious, and it's a little bit scary, because when we hear about her complete surrender, in the framework that we have in our current context, in the world that we live in, her full surrender would be interpreted through material vision as something that's unhealthy, right? Because you're giving yourself entirely. She's giving herself entirely to Krishna. You know, and when Sri Chaitanya comes and he's meditating on the love of Srimati Radharani, and he's praying in the mood of Srimati Radharani, he makes statements that can be scary. Aslishyava padaritam penistamam. I may be lying prostrate at Krishna's feet. He may choose to trample all over me. Right? Or adarshanam marhatam karotuva. Or he may choose not to be present before me, even though I've given everything, even though I've run away from home. I've given up all of the comforts and the pleasures of home. I've given up my reputation. I've given my body, my mind, my words. I've given him everything. He may choose to say, I'm not even going to be present before you. Now, if we put this in a modern context, we say, this is wrong. This person, literally they say, like, right, he's walking all over you, right? He may walk all over me. She's saying, he may walk all over me. I accept that. You know, because he's my prananatha and no one else is. Because my love for him is so deep. I can't even begin to conceive of offering it to someone else. Either he'll accept it or he'll turn his back on me. Nothing changes in my heart because my love is complete. It's entirely unconditional. It's just 100% surrender and devotion. That's Srimati Radharani. And there's a message in that, that again, it can be scary for us. It can be a little terrifying for us. But it can be so nourishing if we can truly understand it. If you see, what in our modern context, if you surrender to someone, you become very vulnerable. Vulnerable to abuse. Vulnerable to neglect. And that may be entirely true. But it's not the case when we're speaking about Sri Krishna, who's, you know, Bhoktaram Yagnatapasam, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, Suridam Sarvadehinam, Gyapamam Shantam Richati. He's the object, the central object that all of our sacrifice and all of the austerities that we perform, the troubles that we go through in life, is all meant to be offered to him. He's the Lord of all planets and all demigods. He's the Lord of everything. But he's also the Suridam Sarvadehinam. He's the closest friend, the closest, well-wishing, loving friend of every living being. He's that one object that you can entirely give your heart to, and you won't be exploited. You won't be taken advantage of. You won't be the loser. You have nothing but gain by your full surrender. It's counterintuitive. It's against our material calculation. It seems wrong, but when it's applied to Krishna, it's entirely right. And Srimati Radharani is the emblem of that kind of complete surrender, where he can walk all over me. He cannot be present before me. He's the Lord of my life. No one else can ever be. I was sharing with Maharaj and with Gadadhar Prabhu. We were driving in the car, and I shared. Sometimes I read something from Srila Prabhupada, and it strikes me as something. It's almost like I've never heard that before, or I never understood that before. I've heard this kind of thing a million times, but Prabhupada said it now, and a little explosion takes place in your head, and you feel a little blessed that a little door has been opened up to take one tiny little more step forward in life. And it has to do with that idea of I mentioned that it said that Srimati Rani is that full power, and Krishna is the possessor of that power. And so I'll just read this a little bit. This is from a commentary in the third canto. I'm going to just read part. It's a long commentary. But here's what Srila Prabhupada says. He says, by meditation, one can understand that God is seated within one's heart. It's within one's own heart. If you practice meditation, you can practice it well. You can experience that God is within my own heart. Even if one does not know it, God is seated within the heart of everyone. Not only is he seated within the heart of the human being, but he's also within the hearts of the cats and dogs. Bhagavad Gita certifies this fact by the declaration of the Lord, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hrideshe. The Ishvara, the supreme control of the world, is seated within the heart of everyone. Not only is he within everyone's heart, but he is also present within the atom. No place is vacant or devoid of the presence of the Lord. There is a statement in Ishopanishad. He says that is the statement of Ishopanishad. God is present everywhere. And now this is the point that really got me. God is present everywhere. In other words, just like our consciousness pervades our body, and therefore we say, this is my body, I'm the possessor of it. Well, Krishna's consciousness is spread also through my body as the Paramatma. But not only through my body, but through every atom in the entire universe. So it's all his body. Because his consciousness is flowing through it all. It's all his. He's the possessor of it all. And he goes on to say that God is present everywhere, and his right of proprietorship applies to everything. Right? Because my consciousness is going through my body, we say it's my body, and I can make decisions about this body, and we understand nobody else should be able to kind of like can take control of my body. Right? There's a conception there that what Prabhupada is saying is because Krishna's consciousness is present everywhere, that his right to proprietorship is complete, it's over everything. Think about this idea, that this body that I'm in, and I've been trained to think that it's my body, that the way that the sadhu is thinking is that this is not my body. It's actually Krishna's body. And therefore my body, my mind, my words, all three had to be completely devoted to him. Right? And this is the way that the Gopis are thinking. This is the way that Srimati Radharani is thinking. That my body is not my own. My body belongs to Krishna. He may be present before me, he may not be present before me. I may be bound before him, he may trample over me. It's his body. My everything is his. When the Gopis are standing there in front of Shri Krishna, and he has the audacity that after they've risked everything and they've given up everything to be out there with him, and they're a mess and they're crying, and he's saying, why don't you go back home? For the first time in the Bhagavatam, they open up their mouths. We've seen the Gopis before, but we haven't heard them speak. But now they open up their mouths and they reveal their hearts for the first time. They're very vulnerable in this situation. Because when to love means to become vulnerable. Krishna himself becomes vulnerable. And the Gopis in this very vulnerable state open their hearts. And they say, basically their message is this: dear Krishna, you're asking us to go back. We think, in the Vedic context, home, family, children. In our crazy world, we think like the ultimate enjoyment is like other things. It's like rock star kind of stuff. But in a normal world, the deepest happiness and enjoyment you think of in that family, in the home, with the family, with the spouse, with the children, and they've given all that up. And they say to him, please don't ask us to go back. We've given ourselves to you. All we're asking you for is please accept us as your maidservants. all we're asking from you is that you allow us to serve you with our love. And so the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, and all the Puranas, the Vedanta Sutra, it's all leading to this conversation. This is what we're meant to stand before God just as vulnerable as these gopis and say, we've tried everything. We've tried to find happiness here. We've tried to find happiness there. We've had enough of that. We don't deserve you, but we're standing before you in this very vulnerable condition, crying, saying, please accept me as your servant. If we can just come to that point, somehow we have to come to that point in this life where we've given up on everything else and we're standing vulnerably before Krishna and we're saying, please accept me. And this is the example that's set by Srimati Radharani. And this example is how we're nourished, by understanding that surrender, that sharanagati, that completely giving of oneself to God. Again, I'm not qualified to speak on this topic. I'm speaking just from what I can see, just on the very surface. There are devotees that have a much deeper understanding of this mood, that feel these emotions, that have been blessed to feel these emotions, that their hearts have been softened to feel these emotions. I'm not that kind of person. I'm just speaking on a very theoretical level. But I feel that even this is enough to be life-changing. This is enough to turn the direction of our life, to recognize the counterintuitive truth that my deepest happiness and well-being comes when I become entirely selfless and I give myself entirely to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. So I will stop here and thank you all so much for your time. Srimati Radharani ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Very well spoken. Very well spoken. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna. I can also speak through this. Hare Krishna. I thank you very much, really very much, for this very good contribution, Kaustubha Prabhu, where you so nicely and in such a real way said it is. We should not take it light to approach these very high spiritual subjects. We should understand them very thoroughly, and where you speak about the example of Srimati Radharani, which we can aspire for. Today I was there for the witness of was a witness of the live broadcast of Wisdom of the Sages, and Raghunath Prabhu said something similar. He said the value of our life does not lie in what we take, but the value of our life should be measured in what we give. That's a very practical, let us say, and very direct translation of Srimati Radharani's example of absolute surrender, where she says, Krishna, you are my the Lord and Master, no matter what you do. It's very, very nice. Our next speaker and possibly singer is Raghunath Prabhu. I want to request Raghunath affectionately to come. We have a very golden share for you. Hare Krishna. I think you have all seen Raghunath Prabhu in your youth, when he was leading the band Youth of Today. It's a great pleasure for us to see you here. Do you wish to sit here? Sit and yes, certainly. We can put this, arrange this for you.
Instead of the chair. Okay.
I don't want that shit. No, it's gold. Or Krishna. Or, no.
Gerne, gerne.
Where's Vana Nandini, our kartal player?
Oh, okay. Very smart.
The band is back together. You tell me. Radhe. Sit right there. Well, Krishna, you sit over here. Is this for singing? Wow, wait, look at this, beautiful.
Hare Krishna. Before Raghunath Prabhu's mixture of speaking and singing, I would just like to remind you again that while singing, please put off the mask. Put on, sorry, this is wrong. Put on whatever this is called, this beautiful thing. And those of you who don't want to take it, please go away at least 5 meters from the crowd. Yeah, and then everything is fine. Thank you so much.
Alright, you guys gonna sing. Where's this? Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Wasn't Kaustubha beautiful? Haribo! We are honored to be here. Thank you so much. Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopala Radhe Radhe Bolo Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopala Radhe Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopala Radhe Radhe Bolo Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopala Radhe Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopala Radhe Radhe Bolo Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopala Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopala Radhe 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 Govinda Radhe Gopala Radhe Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopala Radhe Radhe, Radhe, Govinda Radhe, Gopala Radhe, 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 Govinda Radhe, Gopala Radhe, Radhe. Haribo, Radhe, Govinda Radhe, Gopala Radhe, 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 Govinda Radhe, Gopala Radhe, Radhe.
Yes!
Radhe, Govinda Radhe, Gopala Radhe, Radhe.
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 Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopala Radhe Radhe
Bolo Radhe, Govinda Radhe, Gopala Radhe, Radhe.
Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopala Radhe Radhe
Radhe, Govinda Radhe, Gopala Radhe, Radhe.
Oh Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopala Radhe Radhe
Radhe, Govinda Radhe, Gopala Radhe, Radhe.
Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopala Radhe Radhe
Radhe, Govinda Radhe, Gopala Radhe, Radhe. Radhe, Govinda Radhe, Gopala Radhe, Radhe. Bolo Radhe, Govinda Radhe, Gopala Radhe, Radhe. Radhe, Govinda Radhe, Gopala Radhe, Radhe. Bolo Radhe, Govinda Radhe, Gopala Radhe, Radhe. Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopal Radhe 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 Govinda Radhe Gopal Radhe 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 Govinda Radhe Gopal Radhe Radhe Guru Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopal Radhe 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 Govinda Radhe Gopal Radhe Radhe Guru Radhe Govinda Radhe Govinda Radhe Govinda Radhe Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopal Radhe Radhe Guru Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radhe Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopal Radhe 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 Guru Radhe 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 Guru Radhe 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 Govinda Radhe Gopal Radhe Radhe Guru Radhe Govinda Radha Gopal Radha Radhe Radhe Govinda Radhe Gopal Radhe Radhe Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Radhe Radhe Radhe, Damodara Radhe, bolo.
Radhe Radhe, Damodara
Radhe Radhe, bolo Damodara Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Damodara Radhe.
Radhe Radhe Radhe, bolo Damodara Radhe. Radhe Radhe Radhe, bolo Damodara Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, bolo Damodara Radhe.
Radhe Radhe Radhe, bolo Damodara Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, bolo Damodara Radhe.
You have a favorite name of Krishna? You have a favorite name of Krishna? Gopinath? Hey, Radhe, 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 bolo Gopinath Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Gopinath Radhe.
Radhe, Radhe, bolo Gopinath Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, bolo Gopinath Radhe.
Radhe, 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 bolo Gopinath Radhe. Radhe, 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 bolo Gopinath Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, bolo Gopinath Radhe.
Bolo Radhe, 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 bolo Gopinath Radhe. Name of Krishna? Shama Sundar. He's so beautiful, Shama Sundar. Radhe, Radhe, Shama Sundar Radhe.
Radhe Radhe,